is Michelle McLaughlin. We are North Florida team. We are a K9. Right now we have a K9 search team, drone. We started an equine search team as well. We assist law enforcement in help in finding missing people and loved ones. We do human remain detection and live find. So we get called out for some cold cases too. We get called out by law enforcement. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're all volunteers that just try to help out. And I felt like it would be really good to add, after one of our searches, to add a dive recovery team. So I reached out to Gabriella and asked if there was a interest in joining our search and rescue.
Awesome. And if you'll just look at the camera for one moment so everyone at a remote distance can see you. We have a bunch of our leadership team and several other people who are in attendance virtually, as well as a bunch of people in the room. And there was Bill. I'll take the, yeah, and Victor, I did take screen sharing off so we could see Michelle a little better. So Michelle, thank you so much. Interestingly, Michelle previously owned Doggy Days Daycare Center, which used to be on Capitol Circle. That's where I first met her. And now it is next door, right here, next door to my office. So I call these God winks. They're not coincidences. They really are just God winks. So, so when Michelle came to me, my immediate thought was, let's get a veteran with abilities on our leadership team in charge of this effort. And it just so turns out that Chris, who is now an instructor, yay, that Chris has quite an extensive background in this. And so I really think that it's a beautiful match. Also at SEI, we teach a lot of the skills required to be a search and recovery diver. We actually teach public safety diving and stuff too. So, but I'm going to let Chris take it away. And those of you at a distance, I'll do my best to monitor the chat as well. So I do have closed captioning on, but in case we have any attendees who are hard of hearing or deaf. And so if it's not too distracting, we're going to leave that on. So before we get started, any questions from the people at a distance or in the room? All right, Chris, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're going to tell us tonight.
So my name is Chris Frantz. I started diving in 2009 before I really got into the Army. Spent 10 years as an infantry officer in the Army. I got out in 2020. When I got out, ended up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, working in North Chicago. And there, by an interesting chance, the local dive shop, they worked with a rescue squad. That was paramedics, EMT, and they had a dive portion that partnered with our county, so with Kenosha County. So I had an opportunity to get involved there. So it was my step into public safety diving. So while I was there, advanced my dive background up to dive master, working with diver Dan's there in Kenosha. So some great training opportunities there, and had a chance to work with the Scout Leaders Rescue Squad there in Kenosha. So here, what was it, a year and a half ago, 2 years in April, got a chance to meet Gabrielle and the team here volunteering out, and got a great chance to continue working with them, and just got signed off as instructor. So excited to be able to take others along that wonderful scuba journey that I had myself. So and then when I heard about the opportunity to partner with North Florida Search Team, I think it'll go really well. So what we're talking about tonight is what does it look like for the dive team? What would that mean? What am I getting myself into? What are the expectations of that once I join that? What are we going to be doing? So we're going to go through kind of at a high level. I'm going to try and keep this to about 20 minutes. Max out of 30 minutes. We open up some time for questions because I guarantee they're probably will. So with that, we'll step in.
All right. So while you're doing that, Chris, I need you to get a little closer to the computer because it's really picking me up. I'm gonna stop my mic here, and because the The screen sharing is showing the chat and everything else. I'm not going to be able to monitor the chat box. So if you would just, if anyone has a question, you can unmute yourself and just speak up. But I'm gonna stop my too.
All right. Sounds like that's coming through now.
All right, good.
Perfect. Okay. All right. All right. So what are we going to be covering tonight? So we're going to talk about what is a dive team, what the search and recovery course through SCI looks like. What are some of the hazards associated with search and recovery diving outside of normal scuba diving, the risks there. We'll talk about what is the difference between what is that step into public safety diving. And then we'll start going over some of the specialty equipment that you normally wouldn't see in recreational scuba diving that you're going to start to see when you look into a public safety or organized search and recovery. And then we'll close out with some of the specialty training, both offered through SCI and also offered through us through here locally, and then opportunities that may also be out there. So with that, what is a dive team? So a dive team is going to be a group of properly trained, properly equipped divers that are conducting coordinated operations to search, locate, and potentially retrieve something from underwater. Again, some of the key things I want to take away from this is properly trained, properly equipped, and then properly coordinated operations. This is not just something where you just run out and go, well, there's some water over there, let's go jump in. That puts everybody at risk, and you're usually going to fail at your objective. So the key thing to this is, just like any other diving that you're doing, is you're going in, you're always diving within your training, and you always have a plan, and you always dive your plan. Same thing that crosses over into public safety is that anyone can call a dive at any time. It doesn't have to be the scene leader. It doesn't have to be some attender. It could be, a diver can call it at any point, tender can call it, anybody can call it any time if something becomes unsafe or you perceive an unsafe act. If you're during a recovery operation, nothing is worth the living divers or living people that are working the scene. What is this not going to be? This is not rescue. We are not conducting rescue. We'll talk about the difference between recovery and rescue later in this, but we're not conducting rescue operations. We're not doing swift water operations. So if we're looking at, we're talking in the middle of a hurricane or immediately post hurricane where you have any water that's faster than 2 knots, we're not going to be doing that. You're not conducting search and recovery operations in that. That is a totally different skill set and training set that you need to have to execute operations in that area. And then finally is heavy salvage. So in this, we're going to limit to about 100 pounds is what recreational recovery lift things are on the recreational side. So when we're talking about the idea of pulling up cars or pulling up boats or pulling up large items, for the essence of a volunteer dive team, it's better to call in someone that is properly trained, resourced, that can come in and partner with and assist in that operation. There's no reason to try and undertake that. We do not have at this point, there would be no avenue to have that internal training and knowledge to be able to conduct that. So, all right, so what does it look like? So if we're talking about the bare minimum to conduct a search operation with a dive team, you need to have a team leader and assistant leader. So again, the leader and the assistant leader are focused on controlling the scene, setting up, working, coordinating with media, coordinating with external agencies, sheriff's office, fire department, county officials, private landowners that may have allowed us there. So they're conducting the external coordinations, and then they're overall responsible for the operation and the safety of the team. Then you have your dive team. So if you are conducting any type of boat operations, obviously have your boat captains that are there controlling those vessels. There is no double duty. I'm not running the Zodiac or running the raft or running the boat and tending to a diver. So that's why it's focused separate on there. The other 2 items we have, if you are conducting a tended operation, which would be someone with a diver on a line where you're physically connected to the surface, 1 tender per diver. And for any diver operation, you have a minimum of 2 divers for any situation. So if you are sending 1 diver in, you always have to have 1 diver. If 2 divers are going in, you still have to have a diver back on the surface. So if 2 divers are in, 1 has to be on standby. So, and that second diver, if they're not in the water, they're at a 90%, which means that you have everything on you and you're ready to go as soon as someone says there's a problem. So that's that immediate backup. So a little bit different than the recreational side where you always dive with a buddy. Sometimes during a search operation, it's not good to have multiple people in the water because if you're trying to control the scene underwater, you don't want to kick up more sediment than necessary and then potentially send another diver in once you locate your objective. So a little bit different, but again, if we're talking about the very basics of redundancy in diving and ensuring that you always have a backup and you always have your way to safely get yourself out of a situation, that's where it comes to basic, is you always have a buddy there. All right, so which leads into how do we get trained? So this is a lot of information. It's a whole new different area. So at the very basic level, there is recreational search and recovery diver course. So SEI offers that. We offer that through Life Worth Leading. So this specialty is conducting search and recovery operations within the recreational realm. So by recreational, I'm saying that overhead environments, cavern, cave, ice, those are all separate specialties. Would not be directly included in this. Dry suit is not part of the search and recovery diver course. It's a separate item. Definitely something that's necessary. We'll talk about why that's necessary later. Swift water, I already mentioned that. Crime scene investigation is a separate level of certification, additional trainings you can get on how to photograph a crime scene, how to lay out a crime scene, and how to work in that area. And then finally, body recovery. There are very special things that go with body recovery and something that you have to work very closely with your local law enforcement on how to coordinate that. So overall, the search and recovery course would be something that we would expect all of our divers on the team at a very bare minimum to have gone through with us to ensure that we're all on the same page when it comes to the basic tenets of search and recovery. So what would we see in this? Prerequisites for the course. Since we're talking about a dive team, if you heard my presentation before, we talked about having the dive rescue and accident management course as an option. For this, it'd be mandatory. So we want everybody that's on that to have that level to build for the ability to conduct an immediate rescue of their buddy or someone else on the team that is there in the water. So again, there is a difference between rescue and recovery as defined by OSHA and the National Fire Protection Agency. We have rescue is anything from immersion to 60 minutes post-immersion. Anything after 60 minutes is recovery. So we would not be in the business of being there within that 60-minute window. Again, if you were saying, well, how can we say that if we're all experienced divers, we're out there, we've been around the water, that's where that DRAM, that dive rescue and accident management comes through. It wouldn't be a planned activity, but if it's there, everybody on the team would be certified to do that. So again, when it comes down to it, we want to have any divers that are doing the search and recovery, at least 15 log dives with at least 5 in night or limited visibility. Why do we care about night and limited visibility in search and recovery? It's very easy to silt up a bottom. And if you have not had experience diving in a situation where you have less than 2 foot of visibility, your anxiety level goes way up. So that's not saying anybody as a diver, you could have done a lot of diving during the day and never dove in a very silted out situation. That's okay. So we want to get some experience before doing that, because I don't care who you are. If you're underwater in a situation, all of a sudden you can't see anything, your anxiety level is going to go up. And if so, again, that's just something I'd like to see with that. And finally, goes with that dive rescue and accident management, also current first aid CPR certifications. So what are we going to get in this once we've gotten into the course? Planning. How are we going to locate our objective? How to properly plan for the dives? What special equipment, hazards, how to conduct proper navigation, search patterns. We'll go into the physics of the lifts and the physics of, for example, calculating your surface air consumption rate, your SAC rate. So that's really important for those of us on the surface to know. If we have divers in the water, how long is that gas supply going to last them down on the bottom? That helps us with planning. So when we plan our dive site, we know that it's at a certain depth. If we have a SAC rate for each one of our divers that we've calculated, we know roughly how long we can keep people underwater. And then finally, we'll talk about emergencies and how we're going to react during emergencies and how people can react during stressful situations. So all good things to manage. So again, that's all on the recreational side. The second half of the course is focused on public safety diving. So public safety diving, I said, is a step. It is in the water. Some different tenets, some different techniques on how to conduct diving with the public safety team. So during that course, we're going to talk about dive team organization, how we're going to conduct our briefings both before and after an operation. Again, how do we get better? How do we keep everybody safer during the next dive? Contamination in the water. Something that you might not really think about is, do I really want to get into that water? The difference between public safety diving and recreational diving. If I look at that settling pond someplace, or that really kind of stale water over there, do I really want to go diving in? Is there really anything interests me to get in there? No, not really. So on recreational side, no. But if that's where our potential objective is and something we need to recover, we're going to go in. So how are we going to manage that? How are we going to keep ourselves safe while we're conducting that operation? And then finally, we'll go through the basic laws and liability situations, and then how to properly handle evidence and work with our local law enforcement if that is the situation. So the basic tenets of search, 3 general phases. During that, as anything, you want your pre-planning, which can be anything of the SAC rate of our divers. What equipment do we have on hand? What is our response rate, our response time? What equipment do we need? How many people do we have available to conduct an operation? That all comes in the pre-planning. It's your standard operating procedures. It's the things that you have ahead of time that you can leverage against any situation. Emergency action plan is completely based on the location that you're going. How are we going to, what's going to happen if there's an emergency, if someone does get hurt? If the situation changes, what are we going to do? So that's the emergency action plan. And then planning at the site. So on-site planning mainly focused upon witnesses. So we already know a general situation. Someone may or may not have gone into the water someplace. How are we going to address the situation there? Do we have witnesses? Can we leverage landmarks during any type of reports that have gone previously, just looking at the area and then assessing the natural terrain that's there. If you have any type of light current, if you know what the bottom topography might look like, that you may be able to assess before you get in the water. Why is this important? Because all of us have a limited amount of time that we can be under the water, and we want to keep that search as short as possible because that limits our risk. So by narrowing that search area down to a specific area, limits the amount of time that we have to spend underwater, and hopefully increasing our chances of finding an object. So defining the search area, once we know what it looks like, of course, we want to take into account, since divers are going to be in the water. And if you're tended, you need to know how much line that you're going to be putting them down there. What type of markers, buoys, things that you would have to mark the area. So you want to take in, of course, bottom topography, what's going on, any currents. So those are some critical things that we'll talk about there in the search. Some general search patterns for individual divers. You have things, the expanding square, the U-shaped pattern, all these things you'll get a chance to practice in the open water when you take the course. We'll go through each one of the search patterns and practice. If you're diving as part of a tethered team, so as you can see these bottom ones, this is a diver on a rope. So you're being told when to turn, where to go, all by your tender. So it's a very different situation than recreational diving, where I get control where I go based on how I feel underwater or what my dive plan says. When you're tethered, which is really nice when there's zero visibility under there, you know that your lifeline is there. You got someone right by your side. Even though they're not physically there, you are connected to the surface, and they're controlling that search pattern based on what you defined your search area as. So some very simple patterns there, and really defined mainly by the type of your search area, where you're searching, all sets what type of pattern. So again, we practice the very basics so that we can adjust those to the environment as we go. So again, really great reason for us to all have the same training on the team, to have that same background knowledge, so that when we go there, we're all adjusting from the same known point. All right, I'm not sure if that's going to work, but we will. So once we found our object underwater, once we found the objective, how are we going to get back to shore? Are we going to have, are we going to be able to bring it up individually? Will 2 divers be able to surface whatever we're bringing up? Is this a small item? Are we working with the police to bring up some type of, or locate some type of evidence? You know, something that might have gotten thrown into a retention pond, off into a creek, something that's slow moving, or are we looking for something small that has fallen off of a boat potentially? So is it something we can bring up, use a mesh bag, some type of container if you want to bring up some of the bottom with it? But if you're bringing up something that's heavier than 20 pounds, generally using a lift bag. So again, a really nice thing during a search and recovery course, we'll get a chance to utilize lift bags and see how that can go. That definitely adds a different level of complexity to that situation, because you're not just managing your own buoyancy, but you're managing the buoyancy of an inanimate object that you're trying to bring up. So let me see if this will work, maybe. Through. All right, so basically what we have is the very simplest form of rigging here, connecting our lift bag to the object on the bottom. So this can either be something we have rigged up separately to the item, or if we're lucky enough for the item, maybe an anchor or some other type of object to have an already identified connection point. So what you see the diver doing here, he is taking a gas source. This happens to be his alternate air second stage, and he is adding gas to that lift bag. So what you're seeing there, lift bag is inflating, and what you see is he's not just fully inflating that. Why? Because you always want to maintain control of the item that you are lifting, so it doesn't become uncontrollable. At that point, if it has an uncontrolled descent to the surface, hopefully you don't get caught onto it. Oh, that is not, I'm not sharing.
No, I'm having to do this because unfortunately the video is not playing while I'm using Zoom
Gotcha.
right now.
So the biggest part here is you can see this diver's done an amazing job. He's maintained neutral buoyancy or near neutral buoyancy of this object all the way to the surface, slowly releasing air. As we know, gas expands as we ascend. So it just becomes more and more buoyant, but he's done an excellent job bringing it to the surface. So that is, again, really the gold standard there would be how we would want to bring something up from the bottom, and it's just going to keep trying to replay on me, so I'm going to jump over. So again, the last item on that page was how do we get it out of the water? So that's really, we always want to talk about finding it. Everybody's very concerned. You always want to try and find the item. How do we get it to the surface? Now, how do we get it out of the water? That is really where one of those key hazards, and why it's great to have a team with you when you're conducting any type of recovery operation, because it might be fine. It's, someone lost an iPhone. I'm going to put it in my pocket. That's great. I can bring it back up. But if we're talking about something like potentially a body or some other type of item that you have to maintain solid control over, whether it be evidence coming up for the police, you want to ensure that you have a safe method of escorting that item from the water where you have it up and onto the surface in a controlled fashion, maintaining that chain of custody. So leads us into the hazards conversation. So we always think about hazards. Okay, no visibility. How can I see underwater? How am I going to deal with something if I become entangled? The first thing that really becomes evident when you dive is task loading. So task loading, I'm looking for something, I'm maintaining my buoyancy. If you're on a tether, communicating with the surface, or even on communications, being able to talk to people, you have a lot that you're focused on doing. So what most people forget to do is they forget to check their air, they forget to check their depth. So that task loading can become just as dangerous as an entanglement underwater. So again, diving with a team is very important. So the workload, also one of those things when you're searching, you are down there, you're moving, you are adjusting your load, you may be trying to move things underwater. That workload increases your respirations, and which increases your gas consumption. So again, something to take in consideration. Of course, visibility and turbidity. So that's not just, is it a dark environment, but how much particulate is in the water, how much have you stirred up that's blocking that natural light. Really the biggest thing to take into account, if you look at the photo that's here, this is, imagine doing this in zero vis, or very low visibility. you might not know what you're bumping into. So we go over this in training. We work through that in order to assess and try and work through some of that anxiety in a very controlled situation. So we have that as something that we'll work on. Our entries and exits are always a hazard with the additional gear that you're carrying. And just because you might have many people going in and out, muddy, slippery surfaces. One thing I don't have on here is contaminated water. Maybe I do have contaminated water on there. So again, as I said earlier, you're not always going into water that you want to go in as a recreational diver. So how do we manage that? So we put divers into a environmentally sealed, or as sealed as we can get, situation with dry suits, full face masks, dry gloves, full hoods, so that you are sealed in your suit, so you don't have contact with that contaminated water, and then proper decontamination procedures when you get out of the water. So, which again brings in some interesting gas management, knowing that you can't just take that mask off as soon as you get out of the water. You still have to have gas to get decontaminated. So different things to work through. So difference between search and recovery and public safety. When you're working as part of a county or official agency, you will be governed by the National Fire Protection Agency. That's something we need to discuss with North Florida Search and with Life Worth Leading, working out what standards are we going to hold ourselves to and what level that we want to ensure that we are following at all times. Some of those things may or not be truly applicable with a volunteer dive team versus saying an official, when you're working in official capacity as a member of a either law enforcement or first responding organization. So there's 3 levels when it comes to it. So we have our awareness, which if you take the search and recovery course and go through the public safety piece and you have your DRAM, you will have your awareness. There's additional training for the operations and technicians level. Operations means that you can conduct a search operation. So you could actually be a diver, you could actually be a tender, conducting an aspect of that. Under the awareness level, you can actually help manage the scene, assist at the surface, assist with control, doing anything there, carrying equipment. At the technician level, you're talking about the actual leaders of the organization. So you're planning the operation, training others, and coordinating with external agencies. So you do have those institutional levels of training that people can execute prior to taking on those roles. So I already mentioned rescue versus recovery. So perfect examples of a situation where you have an active rescue versus a recovery. The photo on the left is an actual rescue that's about 54 minutes into a rescue operation for a child that went under. So that was everybody was in full rescue mode. Unfortunately, that didn't have a great outcome there. Child was recovered, but we didn't get there soon enough. And then
Chris, that's another thing that I think is important to talk about briefly, is that this could be.
Yes, so that's what it comes down to, especially working with law enforcement. Law enforcement most likely will not be reaching out to say, hey, we found this, this inane portion of evidence. We really would be great if we could find it. They're probably not going to reach out to external agencies to say, hey, we want this. In many cases, we're saying, hey, a loved one hasn't come back. We don't know where a loved one is. We really want some external effort to come and find this person. And so that is the nature of part of the recovery, is dealing with that. So again, there is a heavy mental strain that goes with that. There are resources available to support with that. So again, as being part of a member of the team, those are things that can come to bear. So it's great things that we can reach out and look for with that. But yes, the only reason I bring up the rescue in this case is because we were the divers for the county. Did not have divers at the time, so all the volunteers were the divers and the tenders. We had so that's how we made up the team. So we were actually on the responding, almost like a volunteer firefighter status on the call outs when that call was made. So you just get to the scene as quickly as you can and meet up with the scene commander there. So that's what was going on at the rescue there. In this situation, we wouldn't be dealing with a rescue. So we're all on the right, which is a recovery. So it is a very controlled and very step-by-step process of conducting a recovery operation. So we know where we're going. We have a chance to study the area. We know what the body of water that we're going to be searching is. No one is rushing in. No one's jumping in without all their equipment on to try and go. Nope, we are taking this as a very controlled methodical step-by-step search process to locate. All right, so special equipment that though we've already talked about many of these things. So on the right-hand side, you see these are a lot of things that we'd already see in recreational scuba. We're already carrying cutting devices when we're diving. Here, you're carrying additional cutting devices. So usually general rule of thumb is three in every diver when you're diving in multiple locations. Again, that's great when you have standard procedures so that every diver is wearing everything the same way. So great thing to be part of a team on that. Buoys, floats, grid search markers. So if you're laying down in the bottom, setting up basically a way so you can construct a grid. If you're trying to find something small, a knife, a gun, something on the bottom, and you want to search through the silt, an easy way to help control and lay that out. Lift bags and rigging, and at a higher level, sonar and metal detectors. Side scan sonar is really nice. To help find things. It's really cool to get a chance, but that requires additional training and expertise to use that equipment effectively. And then finally, evidence bags and containers. Depending on what your local law enforcement is looking for, they might want part of the bottom substrate to come with whatever you're collecting. So there are special containers that they want brought up. You might not want the item that is coming up to touch air immediately. They might want to do that controlled and in a lab so that they can manage that. And then finally, body bags. There are special body bags for packaging bodies underwater, and that is all defined by your coroner and your local law enforcement. So again, it's that pre-planning and understand where you're going. It's not something you just jump into. There's a lot of pre-work that goes on. And then on the left-hand side, it's very specific things down to the diver. So I already talked about dry suit and full face mask, why it's important. It keeps us separate from the environment as a diver. So that you can ensure that if that's any contaminants in their water, you're not being put in contact with. Same thing goes with your regulators, using environmentally sealed regulators versus something that may not be environmentally sealed. Again, full reason for a full face mask. Communication, tether lines, just being on a rope to the bottom. Line poles is a very basic communication. You have a communication method with your team saying, one pull means this, two pulls means this, two pulls 3 times means this. You work through that communication. There's some great recommendations for rope communications in the SCI manuals. And if you're lucky enough to have wired or radio communications, that's an even greater next level up from that, being able to communicate that way. But that fails a lot quicker than a rope connection does. So, but again, a great way to communicate. And then for life support, surface supplied air. If you have that capability. If not, no one will dive with a single cylinder. You will carry a second cylinder with you, and that we can work as a team to identify how we are going to carry that additional gas with us. There are some great convenient methods of doing that are well documented out there. So a lot of options there. Individual specialty training. So for the certain piece of equipment, we cannot just hand it to you and say, hey, go figure it out. So dry suits are one of those. You are in an additional bubble while you're down there. So it changes your buoyancy, changes how you function underwater, adds some additional risks. So there's a whole different level of certification for dry suit, so which we just had some team members go through. So again, critical to not only your ability to stay safe in the water, but it also makes it a lot more comfortable and helps you manage your gas when you can, if you're in 72-degree water for 30-40 minutes, you are going to start to get cold, but in a dry suit, it really helps you stay a lot more controlled as far as your temperature goes. Full face mask. The additional idea, that's really cool, but there's some additional training that goes into that. How are you going to clear your ears if you can't pinch your nose? Big one. It's like, ooh, how am I going to get to that? I'm not sure. So again, what am I going to do if my mask starts to flood? What are the procedures? All great things for both that and the dry suit that we work everybody through in a very controlled situation before putting anyone in open water. And then finally, on the public safety diver side, There are additional levels of training for your divers and tenders, and like I said, technician level when it goes out to command the scene and dealing with evidence. So all of those are out there.
And you brought a dry suit and a full face mask.
Yes.
Go ahead and show those to the camera now?
Sure. So
Now on the screen, yeah.
yeah, so full face mask. This is there's a couple different brands out, 3 different. You have OTS. This is an
Get a
OTS.
little closer to the camera and look at yourself.
This is an OTS Guardian full face
A
mask.
little higher,
Yeah.
go to the screen.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
We saw
So this is the OTS Guardian full face mask. This is probably one of their base models. I do have the comms installed on it. This is wireless communications. So the microphone is inside of the mask, and this is your basically your speaker. It'll sit over your ear. You also have Ocean Reef and Interspiro are the 3 big ones that are on the market right now. So with this one, you have a regulator that clips into the front. Others have regulators that are permanently attached. And then this is you underwater, and then coming up is when you disconnect. So that is a full face mask. Again, the course, you go over your emergency procedures on how you're going to manage clearing that mask, what you do in the case of how do you clear, how do you do these things. It's very important to take the class so that you understand how to use your equipment. Last dry suit. This is not a public safety dry suit. This is just my personal dry suit. Great for training. But some key takeaways. Most public safety dry suits are all vulcanized rubber. Why? Because they're easy to decontaminate, easy to clean, and they stand up much better to contaminated water if there's oil or gas or some other type of chemical in the water. This one would be really bad for that because it has a crushed neoprene outer shell to it, which means that it picks up all types of stuff and dirt and things and takes a lot to try and clean. So this one happens to have a nice tri-laminate inside. Again, the tri-laminate ones are not as great for public safety diving because they're a little bit less robust. And the way they add robustness to the tri-laminate ones is having like a Cordura type of fabric over top or in the suit. Again, very difficult to try and get oil or something out of that or a chemical out of it. So the vulcanized rubber are the easiest to clean and deal with there, and they are very robust. So some other things that we have for equipment wise, this is a harness. So if you were doing tethered operation, this is a harness that you would wear as a diver underneath.
And you can get closer to the camera and hold it in front of your body when it says in front of your body.
Okay. So this is a basic harness. Again, what this is if you are tethered to a tender on the surface, you are wearing this, and you'll clip in through this clip off your left-hand side while you're wearing the harness, and that will be your connection to the surface, and that goes underneath your BCD. So if there's an emergency and you have to ditch your equipment, you can literally be hauled out of the water by the team that's there if need be, or the other diver that's there. So those are some of the pieces of equipment that you would see. And I think this comes down to, so training, we already talked a lot about all of that. What you see here in the photos, we have the cut box. So a PVC box where you string up rope, twine, all kinds of things that you get hooked on. We practice with this so that you can fully see, working you and your equipment through all these entanglement hazards, utilizing your different cutting devices to get yourself free. Once you're comfortable and able to move through and successful, you take it up the next level and you black out your mask. And then you start doing it completely blacked out. And at what point, and that's when you start being able to, when do I communicate to my team that I am so fouled that I can't get out of here? And that's when you say, hey, send the other diver, I'm stuck. So we work through that and your signals to do that. And then finally, body bag work. That is something heavily that's very important to do. Understanding your equipment in any case. How am I going to do this underwater when I can't see? Really, it's tough in a pool, even harder when you can't see anything. And then distress diver rescue and lost diver, running down being able to use your search lines, or how are we going to conduct an operation if we have a diver that's in trouble under the water. So I've been going blew over my 30 minutes, so we'll quick and jump over to see if anybody has any questions. please,
Actually,
questions.
now that the screen sharing is off, do you want to show the face mask a little bit again?
Sure. So again, this is just one,
And I'll actually use this one. I think I took the background off so we can see a little better.
so, again, this is just OTS Guardian. This is a very basic, full face mask. What you have in here, how would you clear your nose? There is something called a nose block that is in here. You can't see it. Basically, it's a block that will sit right below your nose that you can barely breathe through it, across it while you're there, which is in there. And then if you need to clear, all you do is you push your mask up on your chin, makes contact, and you can clear it.
And I've got the Ocean Reef, which is a different full face mask.
Yes.
So.
The Ocean Reef is a much nicer breathing full face mask than this one.
This one sucks air big time.
Yes,
Yeah.
they all do. So again, that's one of those things. I might have a great surface air consumption rate when I'm diving with my, Aqualung reg set, and I love it and it's great. As soon as you put on a full face mask, everything changes. So the other hazards with this, taking a CO2 hit while you're in the mask, if you're breathing more shallow or you're trying to breathe really, really, really hard because you're swimming around and you're trying to do something, how to calm yourself down and start to get your breath back, and how to deal with the diver in that situation. So, yes.
Okay, so aside from like cost, what are the pros and cons of integrated regulator versus one you can attach to a pool?
So you're talking about the one where you can basically plug your own regulator
Yeah.
into the outside. I haven't dealt with those very much. Again, when it comes down to that, is if you're using your own personal gear with that, how easy is it for you to clean? Are you going to be happy with taking? I wouldn't want to take my recreational regulator. So I understand full face mask. I can clean that I can pull all the components off and clean if I have to, but that'd be one of those things is, do I want to put that situation?
So we should be looking at, like, if we're gonna be pretty serious about this, looking at basically buying a whole new set.
I think usually, so with the teams I've been a part of, you have certain equipment that would be part of the team. That would be team
Right.
provided. So that's something that we can look at. If we want to fundraise for the team and say, okay, so
Sure.
we have a few gear sets. Because if we're all trained, one person may feel like diving that day or feel more comfortable. Other person wants to trend on the surface. If you get out there and like, I am not comfortable getting in the water over here, but it's all of only my stuff for dry suit and full face mask. But someone's like, I feel comfortable enough, but if
Right.
it's not your equipment or if you've never trained in that equipment, so that's why it's good, because at that level, everything's generally the same. So
We should probably expect to train in our own stuff for now and
Yes.
eventually look at a team.
yes, that's what I would say, is that I think that for the dry suit, the full face mask, the dry suit and full face mask kit, I would say is probably the best thing to do would have that be a team level piece of equipment. So and then as far as maintaining that equipment would be a team responsibility. So it's not just up to the individual diver. Hey, yeah, I got super busy. It's been a year and a half since I was here. Hey, I have my stuff out. And it's like, when did you get that service? Yeah. But what I've done before is BCD, cylinders, and outside of the full face mask, other first stage regulators were personal equipment.
Yeah.
But again, that's something we can look at as a team and say, hey, what do we have the funding for? What do we have? What do we want to look at? So there's also, I've seen some great teams out there, mainly, county teams or something, municipality teams that have everything. The diver just shows up and everything is all the same. All the BCDs are set up the same, everything. So
Okay, let's Ron, is that distance and has his hand raised. You want to turn your volume up so you can hear him?
sure.
Or I can do it online, whichever one.
Okay. I think I should be able to hear now.
Cool.
Go ahead.
So I was wondering, when you're talking about contaminated water, how do you deal with that with the BCD?
So that's something that, yeah, you're having to clean your BCD afterwards. So,
Can you repeat the question for me?
so what he said is if you are using your personal BCD, with all of your, in this situation, what are you doing if you came out of contaminated water? That is, you have on-site decontamination that occurs. So you have, fire departments or, team internally, you have some type of method of spraying off, hosing off enough to go. The BCD then is something that, you can either further clean later on your own, to a more in-depth level for what you're trying to do. So, that is something that, has been a concern in the past. So I know some guys used a not so nice BC for when they were for their team setup, that they don't mind if it got stained, dirty, or if they really had to work hard at putting it in something to decontaminate it, So, but yeah, again, it's another really good reason to have team only equipment, is so you're not using your own personal gear in that situation, especially in a body recovery situation. That's not fun. So.
I did want to say on a small scale that we have been doing search and recovery of objects for quite some time. As a matter of fact, we have some volunteers in here who've been instrumental. I started this effort many, many years ago informally. And then more recently, Walt came with, he's got a detector, a metal detector, and help with that. And then the Sheros, one is in the room right now. And who was your dive buddy, Robin? No, it was another beautiful girl. It was two beautiful girls. And it was great because this guy was from Texas and he had lost some pretty important, valuable things and needed to catch a flight. And I was sick and couldn't be there. And so I kind of put it to Scuba Friends, and these two beautiful Sheros showed up. And the man was shocked that these ladies, these cute little ladies, did everything and saved his day. And so it was awesome. So we have been doing search and recovery on an informal basis for many years. And so I think, I mean, it was just funny because, here you have this guy from Texas and he's just not expecting these girls to be, digging in the mud and stuff to find things, but they did. They found them, and that was great.
Monday and came back with a watch.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even tell you, and I'm still on a quest to find a wedding ring at Big Blue. So, yeah. So anyway, other questions from people in the room or at a distance?
Curiosity.
Yes.
For the decontamination. What is that?
The water, like the fire hose on you and blow you
Yes,
down?
that was one of the main ways. They have it on the soaker and just stand there and get it a lot off. After that, it's there are different solution mixes. Now, if you're in a major one, there are hazmat units with, again, that would be something with our team being volunteers. If we had a situation like that, do we want to go into this water? What could we request from a local municipality come out with a hazmat team to come and decontaminate us from getting out of that water? But there are different solutions and different things to use to clean off you and your equipment. So, yes.
On all of our searches, law enforcement's right there, and we've never not had to wear a pay. So if we had a dive team, I've never done a dive team before, like I said, but if we had a dive team. Hi. If we had a dive team, then law enforcement would be willing to, and I'm a volunteer fire department, and our guys, I know they would help. We work with.
Well, we have an expert in the room on fire safety right here on our leadership team. The beautiful thing about our leadership team truly is the diversity of talents. But here we have very experienced.
I don't know.
Yes, you are. I was just
Is there a question?
So talk about, we're showing you off. Talk about coordination with fire and how that would work.
Yeah. Well, there is a local.
And before you do that, just say what your background is.
I'm a retired division chief of operations. I was in the original hazmat team, and USAR, but there's a local team and they have the kiddie. I noticed the kiddie pools and the thing and all that. And I'm hoping that they would be. I don't know what PD has in terms of.
Yeah, I don't.
But I know we have a full state finance team here.
So again, that's the critical part as we step into this is tying in with local first responders and how can we bring additional assets to bear. So it's, if we're being asked to go and do something, especially if it's in conjunction with law enforcement going, hey, we can do this. Can you bring this resource to bear in order to facilitate this so that we can go? If we're going to go get into that body of water, there's a lot of runoff from local fields, and we're seeing a lot of that rainbow effect on the surface, everything out of the water to be able to help get us clean. Could we bring in a resource like that? And then just asking the questions on it. So
I just want to say, I did find the posting, and it was Monique. I put it up on the screen, on screen sharing. It was Monique and Robin, and they recovered it. This was just in July of 2024, and it was a wallet and several other valuables. So anyway, so yeah, I once found a wallet, and actually I found several wallets, but I found a wallet who ended up belonging to a veteran, and returned it to him, and he ended up being one of our scholarship recipients. So you just never know. So. All right. So, and I believe, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this going to be more for like rural, you're thinking some of the rural sheriff's offices kind of things? Because the local ones are very well resourced, like Leon County is well resourced, TPD is well resourced, and we actually have done quite a bit of training for both of those for people in both of those organizations. So we've done quite a bit of training.
What counties would be? Because it sounds like we're going outside.
Yeah.
Jefferson, Madison, Suwannee. I've done quite a bit of work with Taylor County. We have talked with, I think Gilchrist, and who's Bobby? Oh, Levy County. Levy County is the other one.
We went.
And we have not, what's that? We did Funiac, which is Walton County. We've worked with them.
And we work with Jefferson County, so.
And yes, we've worked with Jefferson County. And we have not worked with Dixie or Franklin.
Did you say Wakulla too?
We did say Wakulla.
Yep, good.
And like some hold this place.
We
were called out for Alabama. We didn't end up going. There was a plane in Suwannee County that they thought was going to end up being more, and it wasn't. But we're also in the process of training some of our HRD dogs. We have a couple, but to be water on the boat. So that would also be what we could work together more, Hey, we got something right here. And that was, even our local though, they're so busy. So sometimes we might be called out for local. We've been called out and local as well. So just.
All right. Any more questions from the audience or from locally or at a distance? When do we start training? I love it. That's a great question. How many of you after this presentation are still interested in being part of this team? And before you raise your hands, let me say that not everybody needs to be in the water. There are a lot of logistics involved with search and recovery teams. There are a lot of planning, a lot of a lot of paperwork, you name it. There's a lot of needs that are beyond just being in the water. What's that? Grant writers, yeah. We all need grant writers. All right. So Karen says she's interested. She's one of our veterans also with disabilities. I want to say in the room right now, we have many, many veterans. And at a distance, so thank you for your service. They're all members of our leadership team with Life Worth Leading. But I'm sure we have some other people at a distance in the room, maybe even that are veterans too. Thank you for your service then and now. And Chris, especially, thank you. Give Chris a round of applause for heading up these efforts. Victor, do you have anything to add? Ronnie, do you have anything to add? I know you weren't able to be here in person. I'll turn my volume up because I think it's a little louder if anyone has anything.
Yeah, so my question was mainly on the next steps. I think we are all here because we're interested I think there is a need for that. We all know there is a need. And actually, part of my work last year was to get most of the firefighters certified as open water. Right now, I'm in the process to complete the advanced and nitrox certification for a few of them, like 4, but there is a lot of rotation of firefighters in Taylor County. And a couple of sheriff deputies also have been taking the training with me, and the vision at the end, the goal is try to be prepared to join one search and rescue team or recovery team or whatever is needed. They are inside of the organization, so it would be a good venue to. I know the leaders of the. I know the chief of the fire department is a good friend. I know the person who is in charge of the sheriff department of emergency management, where that will be housed. So there are some resources there and some connections that we can use in order to offer or volunteer time and say like we're here to help as needed. But of course we need to train ourselves better, as Chris perfectly explained in this presentation. There is a lot of steps that we need to take in order to make it safe for ourselves as well.
Yeah, and Victor, thank you, because what Victor's doing in Taylor County is awesome. So I'm gonna mute myself or something because I'm getting feedback. How are you? Can you mute? Echo. Thank you. That's better. So I did want to give a shout out to Victor, because what Victor is doing in Perry and Taylor County is phenomenal. And it really is something I think that we could help Victor with the efforts he's already started to offer services there as well. So Ronnie, any thoughts?
Mostly just looking forward to helping out where I can. I'm honestly not sure exactly what my capabilities will be, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, all of us need to assess our own capabilities and what role we want to play. But I do think that there would be a role for everyone. And so if you're still interested, we'd love to have you. And this is an important thing. I can tell you personally that I know that there are many instances of children with autism, especially, who are drawn to the water. They're often missing for quite some time. It is quite possible in these instances that it could be a rescue rather than a recovery. But it also might be a recovery. And even in that case, it's important work. It's important work. We want to give closure to families, and we certainly want to be a resource for people who have family members, and elders or other people who are drawn to the water tend to be, elders or people with dementia and that kind of thing. So a lot of people are drawn to the water. And so I think this is important. And I want to also give a shout out to Michelle and her team, because they've been doing this kind of work out of the water for quite some time. And they have a great reputation. We've been doing work in the water. I think it's an excellent partnership.
Great.
And so, yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Feedback? Sorry about not always clicking the slides when I needed to and that kind of thing. I tried. All right. Anyone else? Okay, here's what I want to do. If those of you at a distance could turn your cameras on, and then the people in the room, if you could get up there, up with Chris, you can scooch some, you can scooch some. Actually, why don't you come over here? It's prettier. Everyone come over here. Everyone at a distance, turn your cameras on and give me a big smile here. Give me a big smile and an okay sign. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, there's stuff in the background. Okay, that's all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Hey, Ronnie and Victor and Erica, do you mind sticking around for just a few minutes? Because we want to talk about the standards and such.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Let me stop recording and thank you.